Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', fantasy champs? It's a good, fine Thursday afternoon. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Poppin' Rick.
What's up?
It is like it's that weird time of year where for fantasy football, it's kind of like it's over. Obviously, it's done. We don't have fantasy football anymore, which sucks. And it's a long trudge all the way to the next fantasy football season. But we still have NFL football to watch. We got some playoff clinching scenarios this weekend that we got to watch through, and then the playoffs start a week from that point. And we're on the roll to the Super Bowl in February, and I feel like that's still so far away. Even though it's not, what is that, 5-6 weeks away?
Oh yeah, wow, it's really not, is it?
So, anyway, today we're going to talk about our biggest hits from the 2022 fantasy football season, give you some predictions that we absolutely crushed right out of the pack, in as Boston accent as I can get, because we're from New England.
That's right out of the pack.
That's right out of that pack. But our biggest hits from this season, and talk about some guys that we got right, why we got it right, and we'll go forward with that. This show should be faster than the last one because the last one had a lot of introspection in it, a lot of thoughts about why we effed up. But
our reasoning behind our mistakes.
Yeah,
this is more just gloating.
Right. Yeah, this one's just gloating. So anyway, before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review, share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like and comment down below any questions you may have. Without further ado, Rick, you ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
I was going to ask real quick before we do that.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on this weekend? This weekend's games? Anything you're watching for?
Oh man. Well, we have to watch Patriots Bills, because as Patriots fans, it will have implications. I don't know what time the games are on, so that's going to affect some of these. But obviously, I want to watch the Steelers Browns game for the Patriots, or at least keep an eye on that score. Lions Packers is a good one that I want to watch.
Patriots Bills is at 1.
Okay,
I'm okay with that.
That's fine. Lions Packers is a game that I want to watch. And then Saturday, if I can, Titans Jaguars. Basically, any game with playoff implications, I have interest in.
I am all in. We're recording this, pre-recording this, so I don't know yet what happened on Monday. But I am rooting for the Bengals to win the 1 seed if it's possible. Very unlikely.
You should just switch your allegiance from the Patriots to the Bengals right now, because
that's probably safe.
We know it's going to happen within the next week or two.
Usually teams, it's hilarious because usually teams like crap themselves after losing in the Super Bowl the next season, and the Bengals just were like, nah, we're going to be good anyway.
Yep. Yeah, no, that was impressive. I mean, they have a good team. They have a great quarterback.
Yeah.
Ridiculous wide receivers. A good running back, an underrated defense, and an improved offensive line.
Honestly, the only team that I'm rooting against at this point is probably Buffalo.
Okay.
And Kansas City.
I was going to say, I'm rooting...
juggernauts.
It's funny because if you had a choice, like if it comes down to Buffalo, Kansas City, who would you root for?
Buffalo.
Yeah, okay, good. Me too.
I don't hate Mahomes as much as I used to. I need to stop hating players. But I just don't like. I can already hear the rumblings. It's already started, and I've accepted it. I accepted it. This season, Mahomes threw 55, 60 touchdowns, whatever it was. But you can already hear the rumblings of people saying that he's the greatest of all time, and he hasn't even played his 7th season yet.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
It's he's the greatest of all time, and it's well, I mean, he didn't even beat the greatest of all time, really any time, besides the regular season once. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, he's got 1 Super Bowl. So let's get there more than once, huh?
Yeah, it's funny because I rooted for the Chiefs at first with Mahomes, and I was rooting for them. And I was happy when they won for their fan base and everything because they had never won in 50 years or whatever. I was like, okay, good. The moment they win, though, I'm out because now we're talking dynasties and everybody gets cocky and it's okay, I don't want any part of this. So I'm like that with the Bills right now. I'm okay if the Bills win the Super Bowl. I would be okay. I'd be happy for Josh Allen. I'd be happy for Buffalo. But the moment they win, I would be like you, and I'd be so far out on the Bills and rooting against them because they would become so cocky, especially their fan base.
They already are.
They are, but it's a different level after they win. Like after you win, it just it goes up.
Because that's the biggest thing. That's like that's what you want to get to. Everyone tries to get there.
Exactly. Yeah, like that's how the Patriots fans win.
I find it hilarious, and I am thoroughly rooting against. This is division rivals, so this is what happens. But I'm thoroughly rooting against Miami this week, so they miss the playoffs. Because if they lose, they're out. Like regardless of what happens, they're out. I mean, there's a lose scenario, but either way, if they lose, they're most likely going to be out. Because if Pittsburgh wins or the Patriots wins, they go into that slot. Either way, I root against Miami because there were some Miami fans on Twitter who are, I don't know why I end up on Twitter as a recommend for like the fans for freaking Dolphins. And it drives me crazy. But they all go nuts over that freaking team. And they were all in. Like after what were they? Freaking 7-2?
Oh my gosh,
like, they were all in.
7-2 or whatever.
They were all in on that team.
People were talking Super Bowl.
I know they were talking Super Bowl. Like, and then they got Bradley Chubb at the deadline, and everyone was like, "Oh, they're contenders. They're contenders." It was 5 straight to end the season. 4 of them with Tua. So shut the frick up about that. Anyway, all right.
That's true.
Let's get to our biggest hits before we keep rambling on. It'll be a good week for football. I actually cannot wait to watch football without fantasy implications. I'm just gonna flick on Red Zone and I'm gonna.
Well, you know what's great, and I meant to bring this up earlier when we were talking.
Yeah.
About how fantasy kind of has some luck involved, and it can be stressful because even if you do everything perfect, you could still lose.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like daily fantasy so much. Because it's great. You gamble, you put your lineup in, you lose, you change it next week, you win.
Yeah.
Right. And daily fantasy is perfect for regular season and playoffs. So you could hop in daily fantasy for the playoffs.
There you go.
Do some of that.
All right. Let's jump into our biggest hits from this season. Our biggest and best predictions from the season that worked out. And we're going to start with number 1, Justin Fields.
He's a bad man.
I'm sad that it ended the way that it did, but you're always on my team, Justin Fields. And I might, in the home league, I might step out against my morals in fantasy football of drafting a quarterback early to do it for Justin Fields.
Do it for Fields.
Because I love him. Fields was a monster this year. He started off kind of slow. Didn't really produce very slow. He had the first 4 weeks of the season, he had 16, 9, 6, 10. And I remember there was a point in the season, like Rick said, I made that trade. I also that same week made a trade with Rick that kind of destroyed his season, to be honest with you.
Unfortunately.
But I gave him Lamar Jackson, and he gave me Derek Carr back, and I said, you know what, I'm going to roll with Derek Carr, and then when I have to start Justin Fields, or I'm going to keep Justin Fields as a backup, and if he breaks out, then that's great. If he doesn't, I'll try to run with Derek Carr and see what happens. And then he had 18, and then I said, you know what, I'm going to start him the next week against Washington, and he didn't leave my starting lineup until week 12 when he had the bye week, but he had 20, 25. Now this is in a 5-point touchdown league, so forgive me, but 28, 45, 42, 24, 21, and then 10 and 18 to end the season. And he just had a monster stretch. Right now, I believe he's the QB5 on the season, so he ends the fantasy football season as a top 5 quarterback. We predicted that he would get at least into the top 10 because of that rushing upside. And I would say at this point after watching the season, this is my take on Justin Fields. He is a better rusher than Lamar Jackson. He's ridiculous. Like the stuff that he does is just absurd. And it's all based on his escapability.
Right.
Like he's able, like Lamar can get away from people, but that's because he's fast. This guy
was gonna
is
say,
literally
I
got
think-
4 people on him. He breaks the tackles and then he runs for 30, 40, 50 yards and scores a touchdown. It's I'd never seen it before.
They're definitely the two best rushing quarterbacks by far. I think the difference is Lamar, I think, is a little bit, I don't know if necessarily faster because
more
Fields gets
agile.
pretty fast. He's more agile, I think a little bit more quicker. But Fields can run into a guy and stay up and then break it like he's like a hybrid of Lamar and Cam Newton.
Yeah,
which is nasty.
Or Lamar and Josh Allen running.
In more modern version.
Yeah, right.
Josh Allen and Lamar, but yeah, ridiculous. And we had him high because of his rushing, and we both liked the quarterback as well, the player.
Yeah.
And had some expectations for him to take a year 2 jump, which he did. Even passing wise, he's still not a good passer, but he did improve as a passer from year 1 to year 2, which is a good sign that he could improve as a passer from year 2 to year 3. But his rushing blew all the expectations for me out of the water. Like I knew he was a good rusher, but not this good. Like he was ridiculous.
Yeah, there were just times in games this season, and this I gotta say, like out of all of my home league fantasy seasons, there was a season I went like 8-0, 9-0 to start a season. I went to the championship and lost that year. That was like one of my most memorable seasons, but this was the most fun because I felt like, now we have Twitter.
Yep.
And back when I had those 9 wins in a row, I wasn't really like on Twitter and I didn't really follow like fantasy football in that aspect. And it was like every 5 minutes on Sunday, I'd look down on my phone during a Bears game and be like, oh, Justin Fields scored again. And then I get a
first
tweet.
Quarter.
I get a freaking tweet from NFL like, Justin Fields winning your week. And I'm like, what? And then I like look at the highlight and he breaks like 5 tackles. And I'm like, it was almost weekly at one point. And I was like, I can't. I love it. It's fun to watch.
Right. It was.
The Bears suck, and their offense is probably worse than the Patriots, but I would rather watch that every week than what I have to sit here and watch with Mac Jones and the Patriots.
Right. Yeah, I agreed.
But
agreed 100%.
Fields was great. I love Fields. This is probably one of my favorite players in the NFL at this point. And I hope that he has – the only way he is going to have sustained NFL success is if he does improve the passing numbers. 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns is like an improvement on last year, obviously. Only 11 interceptions. So, that's good. But he needs to be
It's still nowhere near where he needs to be.
Right. He needs to be around like 38 to 4,000 passing yards and like 25 plus touchdowns. I mean, if he adds that with the rushing, he's going to be up there with Josh Allen every year. Yeah. So, Justin Fields, definite, not a gloat, but I was nervous. Not going to lie. 4 weeks into the season, I was like, we got everything wrong.
Yep.
But
something's turned around though.
Something's turned around. So let's talk about the other guy that turned around. Travis Etienne. Jacksonville Jaguars. This season, I would say in PPR, he's the RB18. So he wasn't like a stud.
He wasn't a monster.
I wasn't a monster. In terms of breakout. And most of that is because of the early season stretch that he went on. Because if you pace out from at the running back position from weeks 5 to 17, Travis Etienne is right around RB14. So he moves up a little bit on that list. But he essentially finished this season. I want to just confirm the accuracy of that. Yeah, RB18, 199 fantasy points. This is actually a good scoring year for running backs. A lot of guys didn't get hurt, which is not normal.
I know McCaffrey, Barkley.
Yeah, so usually
Jacobs.
some guy like that usually is like 200 fantasy points is like right around RB14 or 15. So anyway, but he has a really good season. Started off slow, 8 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points, 3 fantasy points, and then from there on, it was 14, 12, 18, 25, 26, 10. He had a game where he had 0.3, 7, 3, 12, 14, and 23.
8% snap percentage in that game.
Yeah, I don't know. It was probably hurt. But So he had a stretch there after the bye where he just wasn't performing well. But to end the season in the fantasy playoffs with 12, 14, and 23, that's fantastic. They took him out of the game in Houston after the first half because they're blowing Houston out so bad. But he had 9 rushes, 108 yards, and a touchdown, and 3 catches for 32 yards. So had he played in the second half, we were probably talking about like a, freaking. Right. He had 38% of the snaps in that game.
We got robbed of a 30-plus point week.
Yeah, and I got robbed of a fantasy championship now that I'm thinking about it. Thank you, Doug Peterson, for wasting my life. You fricked me with Miles Sanders back in the day, and now he does it again with Travis Etienne.
He was doing it earlier in the year, too, by playing James Robinson over him.
God. But he ends up working out. He wasn't like a huge breakout like we thought he was going to be. Like I was in the vicinity of 12. Top 12, but running back 18 is a very good running back too on your team. It's similar to like the people who won with Damian Harris last year. So Travis Etienne definitely a plus.
Yeah, and a lot of people were either in on or out on Etienne. We were one of the people that were in, so we did get that right. But what's interesting is I thought Etienne, one of my biggest things was his passing game. He was a great receiving back in college. He had that connection with Trevor Lawrence. He had like 75 targets his last year in college.
Yeah,
I thought he was going, and when James Robinson came back, I thought Etienne was going to get like 70 targets this year. He only had 43 targets, 33 catches, and no receiving touchdowns. But he still was the RB18 because he had 1,100 yards rushing on the ground with those 5 touchdowns, which isn't even that much. So I think we haven't seen Etienne's ceiling, but he did have a really good year. We saw moments and flashes of him being great. And from week 5 on, basically when he was the starting running back, he was really, really good. He was a high-end RB2, low-end RB1, which is what we expected out of him going into the season. So he did a really good job, and I honestly, again, I don't think we've seen the ceiling for Etienne. I'll be in on him in drafts next year.
Yeah, 1,000%.
And that offense could be really deadly next year too with Calvin Ridley joining the squad.
Oh yeah, it takes some pressure off Travis Etienne.
Some goal line touchdowns maybe.
Maybe, hopefully. I sometimes it was annoying to watch the Jaguars this year. I'm not gonna lie.
But I mean, Etienne. As someone who had Trevor Lawrence,
you were having a good time. Number 3 is CeeDee Lamb. And, we had talked about in years past where we put CD on the breakout list. And in like the past 2 seasons, he would always finish like barely top 20. Like barely. Right. And everyone was like, has the CD breakout happened? And I remember we had that discussion prior to a show. Like, do we say it again? Like, has it happened yet or has it not happened yet? And then everyone was like, well, maybe CD isn't really that good and maybe this is what he is. Well, I'll tell you after 17 weeks of the season what CeeDee Lamb is. He's top 6 wide receiver in fantasy football, 285 fantasy points for the Dallas Cowboys.
That's nasty.
Yeah, I wish I was able to draft him, but I was not. And I wonder how many fantasy teams had him and went to the championship. I'm very curious about that. But so CeeDee Lamb definitely broke out this year. I think this was more of like a confirmation almost of like, okay, we see where this is going. At some point, it's going to happen because he is one of the best wide receivers from his class. Like, he showed at many times that he was elite, and there were times where he got hurt or lost his quarterback or other things happened to stop CeeDee Lamb from really breaking out. And this year was the full, like, getting rid of Amari Cooper was the nail in the coffin for this to be like, CeeDee Lamb is a wide receiver 1. And there's no more disrespect in that. So this was almost an easy one. Just chalk it up. But it had to be said because people were out on CeeDee Lamb already.
Yeah. And I was tempted to do that after week 1 because the 11 targets, 2 catches, and it was bad 2 catches too. Like, he had like 2 or 3 bad drops in that game. It looked so ugly. But he was able to bounce back and have a really good season. Finally having the year that we expected him to have. And it's funny because I'm looking at my projections, and my projections are, obviously not always perfect. But with CeeDee Lamb, I project. Do you have his stats out? Do you see what his stats are? So he had 149 targets. I projected 147. He had
Whoa!
102 catches. I projected 97. So 5 catches.
Whoa!
1,300 yards receiving. 1,307 yards receiving. I projected 1,312 yards receiving.
Whoa!
5 yards off. 8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns.
That's
so
great.
Almost perfect, identical to his
That
actual
was on
stat
17 games though. So frick you, dude.
line. Is it?
Oh,
I don't know.
Shoot. I accidentally.
Maybe it is.
I was trying to see what my accuracy was on Fantasy Pros last week, and I accidentally set it.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, week 17 rankings. So now I'm going to be all screwed up.
That's not good.
Anyway, yeah. Joe, you almost nailed it.
I know. I just had to gloat there. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb, he was more of a year guy, but I still liked him. I had him, I think, as wide receiver 6, and that's where he finished. It was just good to see him finally emerge. And a lot of people going into the year did not like CeeDee Lamb in the top 5 or 6, and because he had kind of just underperformed throughout his whole career so far. So good to see that he finally gets the job done.
Yeah. Glad I was right on that. The funny part is I only have him in one dynasty league, and I didn't have him in a single league redraft.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to bask in the glow of CeeDee Lamb. But anyway, the next two guys are do not drafts that we had for the season. So they're not breakouts. They're do not drafts. Number one was Darren Waller. Now I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, Waller missed time. And if he played the whole season, I don't want to hear that baloney. He sucked when he was in. All right.
He did.
Like, he had some good games, but I think there was a real, because Renfrow blew too. I think Devontae Adams had a real effect on this offense. And the second he stepped in there, all of the other fantasy assets were dead in the water. And that was what the point was with Darren Waller. I was really nervous about the Darren Waller take, because I was like, this guy's going to poop all over this. He is going to blow up, be really good again, and I'm going to be wrong about this. Didn't expect to be right about it, but we are. And I just think when you look at like the Raiders, there were times where the only guy getting targeted on the offense was Devontae Adams. Like, if the entire group was there with Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller and Devontae Adams, like when everyone was there, right? Like, the only guy in that offense that was getting targets was either Devontae Adams or Mac freaking Hollins or Josh Jacobs. And it's like, you look at the situation for a lot of people who drafted Darren Waller really high. I mean, obviously you got burned, and yeah, he missed time, obviously. So that affects it. But like I said, even when he was on the field, like, he wasn't putting up good fantasy numbers. And like, I like to go by the good old average fantasy points a game. He had 9.9 points per game in 8 games, which was tight end 9 on the season.
Which is still not bad because tight ends are awful.
Right.
But the expectation
for Darren Waller was top 3. And where he got drafted. See, that's the thing, is that the tight end 9 in fantasy football scores 9.9 points per game. The wide receiver 9 or the running back 9 or even the quarterback 2 or 3 or whatever, they blow that right out of the water. So, like, if you drafted Darren Waller in the 3rd or 4th round, anticipating that he was going to be a top 3 or 4 tight end and that you were going to get some kind of a positional advantage from it, you got screwed. And you should have drafted the wide receiver. You should have drafted the other guys. If you had, say, drafted like Travis Etienne in the 4th round, or you had drafted I'm trying to think of a wide receiver.
Jalen Waddle is in that range.
Jalen Waddle. Yeah, you would have benefited from that instead of losing out on that. So Waller was a really bad draft selection. That's why we told you not to draft him, because the production was going to be lower and all of that stuff, and it ended up hitting more than we thought. And I know there's going to be a lot of people like, he got injured. You have to look at the numbers a little bit deeper than that, friends.
Yeah. Yep. And he did. I mean, obviously the injuries did not help, but it is true when he was out there and Renfrow was out there.
Yeah.
It didn't look good for those guys, and it was still purely Adams for the most part, and what Mac Hollins sprinkled in. I think the Raiders, like, it was, one of the things was, okay, so you get Adams, you have Waller, you have Hunter Renfrow, Josh McDaniels is a good coach. Look at all these weapons that Derek Carr has, and it's going to be a great offense.
Yeah.
First of all, McDaniels kind of struggled as the coach, but can Derek Carr support that many fantasy assets? Can Derek Carr have a 30-plus touchdown season with 47,000 yards? I don't know if he can, because this would have been the year to do it, and he just didn't do it even when those guys were healthy. They did miss a lot of the season, but when they were healthy, it still did not look good.
Yeah.
And Waller's also getting older. He's 30 years old now, so I think it's time to be kind of out on Waller going forward as well.
Yeah. I still think he's got a couple of years left, probably, because it seems like the tight end position.
That is true.
Age,
the tight end position.
For some reason, age is it's like being a quarterback slightly less.
Right. Like Kelsey's 33 and he's
But I do agree with Rick. I think where the Raiders are going right now, seemingly, if Brady,
I think he's going to get traded.
If Brady did walk through the door and Waller was still on the Raiders, I would be in for like one or two more seasons. But if he is there to start the 2023 season and they don't have a quarterback or they drafted a guy, because Derek Carr's not playing quarterback for the Raiders next year. If they draft a guy or bring another guy in via free agency, I don't know if I'm excited about Darren Waller from that perspective. I feel like he should have a couple good years in him, but they don't have a quarterback now. They don't have other situations. So, definitely, I would. If you have a chance to trade Darren Waller, I would do it now.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, the final one that we have is Drake London. We said not to draft Drake London because I think he ended up like a top 6 round wide receiver at one point.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look. I'm gonna pull.
He was. I think he was 6th or 7th round.
Just to clarify, an old PPR mock draft if they still got those. Hold on. Oh no, they deleted them all. Thank you guys. Thank you for making my life miserable and not saving my mock drafts. So I think he was around the 6th or 7th round, and everyone was drafting him based on the premise that, the Falcons don't have any other pass catchers in the offense besides Kyle Pitts, and that was it. And Kyle Pitts was a big bust, by the way, before getting hurt. But Drake London was the only guy there, and everyone thought, okay, if he's the only guy there at the receiver position to catch the ball, then he should finish as a very highly touted wide receiver. And so people started drafting him like crazy. He finished as the wide receiver 39 this year, which for a rookie, I wouldn't even say is like horrible. He showed at times this year he was really good. And at times I was like, oh my God, Drake London. I might be wrong about this kid. I thought he might be a really good wide receiver in the NFL, but I didn't think it was going to happen this year until they really got a quarterback. And as of right now, I don't think anything's changing for Atlanta unless they draft a quarterback this year. But I didn't believe in Drake London because he was on one of the worst offenses in the NFL. He's a rookie wide receiver. And Kyle Pitts in his rookie year on a team with virtually no other targets didn't do well either. So it's like, why do we anticipate that Drake London was going to be this elite wide receiver on the outside that was going to finish as a top 6 round drafted wide receiver? Like, I had a hard time buying in on that. And if you didn't draft him and you took, some other guys in that vicinity, you benefited from that. So I'm glad you listened, if you did, to us not drafting Drake London.
I was very out on Drake London. I think, he's a young player, rookie, who, again, showed some flashes. I think we've been spoiled a little bit with rookie wide receivers as well.
Yep.
With Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle.
Bad, huh?
What is it?
This season wasn't good, huh? For wide receivers. Continue giving your takes. I want to count how many guys finished high.
I think Garrett Wilson and Olave did okay, but I don't think they were top 15 guys. But yeah, London just, he was playing in an offense that, it was kind of the same process with Mooney, except London was a rookie. So you add in that effect, and it's like, okay, this isn't going to be good. It was a low volume passing offense. Marcus Mariota was the quarterback. We expected the Falcons to kind of suck, which they did. And then they also played like the Bears at times, where they would run the ball 30 plus times in the game, and Mariota would have like 18 pass attempts. It's hard for anyone in a bad passing offense to succeed when you're passing the ball 18 to 20 times. It's just hard to do. And he did have good moments. In the beginning of the season, he had 12, 24, and 14, and he was ranked as like the wide receiver 16 rest of the season. And then you pointed that out to me, and I was very upset that he was that rest of season rankings.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he had his moments, but was, I think, an easy one to kind of stay away from. But could be a guy who you look at next year as a potential breakout year 2 guy, depending on who that quarterback is.
So to give you the guys, we have Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 22. So he was the highest rookie.
Okay.
And then we had right behind him Chris Olave at wide receiver 25. And then the next guy up, I believe, was
the 2 Ohio State receivers.
Yeah, I know. And they still got some good guys coming out too. Marvin Harrison Jr., baby. Oh.
Yeah, he's
Drake London, wide receiver 37. And then after that, I mean, you had Christian Watson, 44. Jahan Dotson, 52. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of drops off from there. So, I think there's George Pickens he's not. Where the heck is George Pickens? George Pickens had a really good rookie season for
he had moments too, though.
He had moments where he was really good, but
wasn't consistent.
Yeah, he wasn't consistent enough. So, very interesting year for rookie wide receivers. But I just the last couple years we've been blessed with Justin Jefferson, and we've been blessed with Jamar Chase. And we've been blessed with some of these really good wide receivers coming in.
Even Jalen Waddle was wide receiver 12 last year.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle was really good. So it's there's a lot of these rookie wide receivers coming in and playing really well. And I think you're going to continue having that. You have these wide receiver machines like OSU and Alabama and among other schools. So it's you're going to have wide receivers come in. They're going to break the mold. They're going to do really good things. And there is this kind of beneficial reality to things where some of these receivers get drafted in the middle of the first round to good football teams now that need a wide receiver. And then they end up having really good seasons because of that. But this year typically this goes back to the norm because typically I remember the last guy that everyone was talking about, Terry McLaurin was oh my God, he had a legendary rookie season.
He's wide receiver 24.
He was wide receiver 18, I believe, that season. So, but London finishes at 22. Garrett Wilson, or London finishes 25. Or no, he finished 39. Sorry. But you have these guys not finishing even in the top 20 at this point. So it's do we have what are our anticipations or expectations going into next year? Should we be drafting rookie wide receivers in good situations, or should we not be doing that because the last 2 years were just fluky?
Right. I think if you think he's the top wide receiver, I would be fine with you drafting him.
Yeah.
But most cases, I would not target a rookie wide receiver. Well, you get Garrett Wilson was what, a 12th round pick, 13th round pick?
Yeah.
Chris Olave was a 10th round pick. You want to target those guys, and they can be top 25 wide receivers, top 30 wide receivers. That's a good strategy to have. But maybe a guy like Drake London, who's not even in a good situation, going in the 6th round is probably someone you should stay away from.
Right. So, and I typically like Rick just said, if a rookie wide receiver goes to a decent situation, that's fine. You can kind of develop that, but
or he's a Jamar Chase level prospect, which is
right, exactly. Because you can't even the Bengals Joe Burrow was coming off an ACL,
that was all, true.
No one you didn't think that the Bengals were going to be really good that season and go to the Super Bowl. So that was just a fluky situation. Obviously, they have the quarterback and all that stuff, and that changes things. But Justin Jefferson went to a good football team with a good quarterback that could get him the ball, and he had a good rookie season. Yep. So you just gotta find the right situations, especially all players. Sometimes talent overtakes that, but I would say more times than not, situation overtakes the talent, because there are guys that I don't think are that talented that are really good for fantasy football. And
Yeah.
like
I think
Jacoby Myers,
positions too.
Jacoby Myers is not talented. Like you watch him play on a week-to-week basis, he can do nothing after the catch. He's just a good route runner, and he gets the job done in the slot, and that's what he does. And because of that, he gets targeted 8, 9, 10. He's a good football player. He's not He's not like uberly talented, but he can finish in the top 12 in fantasy football if you have a good offense, right? So it's like, or at least be a good flex. So there's just some guys in situations that, perform better and then may take a lead. Like I think George Pickens is uberly talented. And once that situation turns around a little bit, he's going to be really good.
Even next year, like he's going to be a breakout receiver. That could be
quick note as we end the show because we're over time. But have you been watching Kenny Pickett the last 2 games?
No, but I listen. Even like Pickett had a game this year where he had 3 interceptions, and everybody was calling him a bust in like the comments and stuff, saying he's like awful, shouldn't have been drafted. I went back and looked at the game, and I was like, he actually made a lot of good plays.
Yeah.
He just like the interceptions were like deflected balls and stuff. I was like, I'm kind of interested to see how this goes. And now all of a sudden,
it's flipped.
He's playing pretty decent.
I still think the Steelers' offense is garbage. Like they can't score. Like the Patriots can't score more than like 15 to 17 points.
Add that to another team with bad offense coordinator, by the way.
Oh yeah. But so it's the same thing with the Steelers. Like they can't score more than 17 points, but like he's got some stones on him. He freaking threw 2 game-winning touchdowns in a row.
People said he's like Walmart Joe Burrow.
Walmart Joe Burrow. Is there a word like Dollar Tree Joe Burrow? Can we say that?
Dollar Tree Joe Burrow. He's like Mini Man Joe Burrow.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Our biggest hits from the 2022 fantasy football season. Next week, we're going to do a little bit more recapping of the week. We'll talk about who's going into the playoffs and stuff like that. Maybe make some predictions going into the first week of the postseason. But anyway, enjoy your night. Enjoy your weekend. See you later, guys.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.